There's a new book that recently came out about a Yid from Telz, a Gaon, one of the tzaddikim of pre-war Europe, Ramotel Pogromansky. Ramotel Pogromansky, it's come out in Lashon HaKodesh, a fascinating book. There's a beautiful story about him, which helps us to understand the fascinating Rashi in this week's parsha. Ramotel was once traveling with a friend of his between the two wars. They were traveling from Telz to Kovna in order to be there for Shabbos. It was Erev Shabbos, it was getting late. They'd been on the train for some time, and they turned to each other after having been involved in a deep Torah discussion, and they asked one another and inquire why the train hasn't stopped. It should have stopped ages ago. They inquire from the other passengers, when are we arriving in Kovna? And the passengers say, we're long past. Why did no one stop us? Why did no one stop you? Why did no one tell you time to get off? The way you two are arguing, no one wanted to get involved. Okay, they decide they've got to disembark at the next station. It's almost Shabbos. They disembark and they look at the name of the train station and they don't recognize the name. And you could be pretty sure in pre-war Europe, pre-war Lithuania, if you didn't recognize the name, the yeshiva bacha didn't recognize the name of that town, there wasn't a Jewish community there. There was no Yiddish here. And so his friend turns to him and says, Motel, what are we going to do? It's Erev Shabbos, we're lost. And he says to him, a Yid's never lost. He says, what do you mean? But we're here. He says, look, in Parshas Vayero, it says there, the lady we laid on Rosh Hashanah, Hagar was in the desert with her son, and they've been banished from Avraham Avinu's home. And it says, Vatelech Vatesa B'Midbar, and she went and she got lost in the desert. And Rashi says fascinating words. He says, Chazal say on this, that it teaches us, Shechozra Legilulei Beis Aviyah. She went back to serving Avodah Zarah. Ask Ramotel, how does Rashi know? How does Rashi know that she went back to serving Avodah Zarah? It said she was lost. And maybe you could add a question to that. In last week's learning in Parashas Lech Lecha, we also learned about the fact that Hagar was in a desert. But there she navigates it perfectly well. She meets Malach after Malach. They guide her, they give her guidance. She doesn't seem to be lost in the desert that time. And he answered and he said like this. As long as she was in Avraham Avinu's home, last week's Parashah, she was in his home, she was his wife, she was set to return. She embraced the ideals of Avraham Avinu. She embraced Emuna. That's what pulsated in the veins of Avraham Avinu's home. So why am I in this desert? Why do I find myself here? That's the Rebbeinu Shalom wants. That's why I'm here. That's where he wants me to be. Okay, so then the Rebbeinu Shalom is my guide, and he sends you Malachim. In this week's parasha, she'd been banished from Avraham Avinu's home, never to return, some say. And therefore she'd rejected the ideals of Avraham Avinu's home. If she'd rejected the ideals of Avraham Avinu's home, then Emuna's gone. Then if there's no Emuna, it's Chazal Legilulei Beis Aviyah. And Memela, if she's gone back to Avodah Zarah, she's lost. His friend said, listen, Motel, it's beautiful pshat, and I'm sure it's emes in Rashi. Oh, well, we're lost. It's Erev Shabbos, where are we going to go? He said to him, 1 minute, he scans the train station, he looks out, he sees a gentleman, he walks over to him and says, are you a local? He says, yes. Are there any Jews who live here? He says, yeah, there's one Jew. Where does he live? He's chosen to where to go. And he knocks on the door of this Jew's home. The Jew opens the door, looks out and sees him and says, are you Eliyahu Navi? He says, I'm not Eliyahu Navi. Why do you ask? He says, well, last Shabbos, my wife had a baby. Tomorrow's Yom HaShmini. I've tried everything this past week to secure a male in the nearby cities, towns. Nothing's come up. So I was sure that the Rebbeinu Shalom has sent me Eliyahu Navi, and you're here to do the bris tomorrow. And Ramotel says to him, I'm not Eliyahu Navi. In fact, I'm not even a male. But my friend who's here behind me, he happens to be a male. And it just happens to be that he's got all the kalim to do the milah tomorrow. And he turns to his friend and he says to him, a Yid is Amalaf Alona. A Yid is ever lost. A Yid is never lost. As long as he embraces the ideals of Avraham Avinu, and he's a Ma'amin in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he lives with Emunah, then a Yid realizes, why am I here? This is where the Rebbeinu Shalom wants me to be. Why am I in this situation? Because this is the situation that the Rebbeinu Shalom wants me to be in. Then he's never lost. And the Rebbeinu Shalom will guide him and send him Malachim to take him all along the way.